camera's rolling.
Porter Halyburton interview, take 2. Ah.
Second sticks. Third sticks. Just try to make sure. Okay. So we were talking about this stripping of the soul, and then of finding a more realistic self to begin with.
Right.
And each of you found that together. And men like Stockdale and Denton and Robbie Reisner provided a template for you. Let's talk about the ways. What my experience has been is that you men turned humiliation into humility, which is a better starting point. You took humiliation, you went through the crucible, sort of through the eye of the needle. You found yourself incredibly abject. I remember reading a theory telling me he lay in his cell for a year, feeling like if he ever got out of Vietnam, he could never return to his country, that he had betrayed his country. He would have to move to South America or Mexico or something. That's incredible despair. And that moment, you know, some have called it God. Some, I think Stockdale referred to it as, he was a proponent of Epictetus, and he referred to it as finding his essential goodness. You talked about Viktor Frankl. Let's talk about the ways that you plotted that journey back into self, and the new self, and the new definition of self.
Well, I think the path to a final sort of adjustment to our condition was long, and when you're in solitary confinement, it's one thing. It's when you're in isolation, it's another thing. And the times that I was in isolation were, in many ways, the worst, because you're cut off from everything. You might be able to look through a crack and see something. And the danger there is that you don't know what's going on, and so you begin to think of things in your mind that are not necessarily correct. And so you have these sort of fantasies and so on. And so a lot of it was trying to control your fantasies, you know. Like I know that even when I was in this tiny little dark cell, I'm still, you know, doing my calisthenics and push-ups and doing all this kind of stuff, thinking I'm really getting in great shape. I gotta be in great, I wasn't in great shape, you know, it was delusional. But I was doing something, and that was important to stay active. And so my philosophy from pretty much the very beginning was you can't just sit on your butt here, you can't just feel sorry for yourself. I never felt the kind of guilt that Reed expressed at all. I mean, I initially did when I was forced to do something I didn't want to do, but I didn't feel like a failure, because I knew that my greatest heroes had failed in the same way. And if they failed, then it was kind of okay for me to fail. And, you know, maybe we'll be court-martialed when we get home, but maybe we won't. But I'm not going to worry about it. And so I never experienced much guilt at all. I mean, I was trying to figure out how to survive and how to get along, how we were going to make the best of it. And at the very beginning, I thought it was going to be a short experience. Everybody thought the war would be over soon. I was number 40 to be shot down. And even the most pessimistic among us thought we might be there 2 years. And so we were not really hunkering down for the long haul, you know. And I wrote a poem very early, sort of expressed, you know, we just need to wait until the fall. But we had a lot more to do that. And of course, my experience with Fred Cherry changed all of my thinking about captivity and what we were doing there and what it meant to try and survive and to help others to survive and so on. So I think it was a journey, and I know that one particular psychological adjustment, when I first was shot down in October, I was hoping we'd be home by December because our ship was going home by Christmas. And I said, I can't imagine being here for Christmas. And so I bit off the 2 months, you know, that I thought, well, no matter how bad it is, I can last for 2 months. And we were there for Christmas. And then I said, well, I sure as hell don't want to be here during the summer. So we'll be home by summertime. And we were there in the summertime. And then said, surely we'll be home in a year. And we were there for a year. And during that time, there would always be these things that happened or something that would raise your anticipation that you were going to go home. Food got better. One time they gave us a physical exam. Oh, they're getting us ready to go home. And somebody is shot down and they bring in some information, you know, oh yeah, the war's going to be over soon. So it puts you on this emotional sine wave. You know, you get very optimistic and hopeful, and then it comes crashing down when it doesn't happen. So I developed what I call long-term non-specific optimism, which leveled out that sine wave of emotion. And my projected return date, you know, which started off 2 months and went out to 6 months and 2 years and so on, finally I said, I don't have one. You know, I'll go home when we go home. And if we don't go home, I'll be here. And so I just didn't worry about it. And I didn't take any of these signs that things were going to happen seriously at all. Even when it was happening, I stayed on my level line. And it wasn't until we were on the airplane and the pilot said, we're feet wet, meaning we're out. Oh, we're not in Vietnam anymore. We're out over the ocean. That was when it all kind of turned. I really believe it. We're not going back. I don't care, you know, because up until that time, I always knew something can happen. Even though they've signed the agreement, something can happen, and I cannot go. So that helped me a lot. I didn't worry about going home. I worried about making the most of the time that we had and planning for the future. And so and I had gotten over the other sort of psychological adjustment is that in the beginning, I lived in the past. You know, I thought about my past. I thought about every good thing, you know, that had ever happened. And I relived all these experiences. And, you know, as I said, I tried to remember the names of everybody in my first grade class and, you know, all these things that had happened. I just relived all these experiences because that took me out of the present. And it was a way to escape from the present, to deal with that. And even in interrogation sometimes, if the interrogator was preaching to me about something, you know, I found that I could just nod my head like that every now and then, and he thought I was there, and I was not there. I was off on some adventure, some wonderful thing that I'd done or experienced before. And then I sort of ran out of that. Every time you move in with somebody, you share your life, your past life with them, and you learn as much as you can from them and everything. And then I began to say, okay, well, how am I going to change my life for the better when I get home? How am I going to make up for this lost time, this wasted time? And so I lived in the future, planning. You're expected to design a house. So I did that, I designed this wonderful house, and I built the thing, and I envisioned living in it and being with Marty and Dabney and doing things and swimming in the pool and, all of these things, down to the greatest detail. And I started thinking about all the things that I wanted to do. And by the end, I had alphabetized and categorized all these things into a list, alphabetical list: art, aviation, automobiles, right through the alphabet. And for each one, there was a mental folder or a box, and I could stop on that one and open the folder, open the box, review the information, add something new that I learned from somebody else or something, and close it and move on. And I had 77 categories of things. No way I could ever do any of that. I hadn't consulted Marty about it anyway, so I wasn't going to be able to do it. But it occupied the time. It put me in the future, out of the present. And, we did all kinds of things to think about the future. And we took imaginary trips and did imaginary things thinking about the future. And then at some point, I don't know when it was, I suddenly realized that I didn't have to live in the past or the future, that we had a present. And we had built a culture, we had built a military organization, we had built a family, and we had every aspect of civilization, of culture, except for our real family members. But we had each other as family, even though there were most of the people I'd never talked to directly. I knew information second or third hand and so on. But we were all a band of brothers, and we had individually, this happened after I got into a larger group of nine people. And then it was then that we could really engage in educational and recreational and tell movies and stories and write things and do things and make things and think about things and all of that, and share our knowledge and learn languages and learn to play the guitar and just, all kinds of things. And so I think it was finally the realization that the life that we had there, as rough as it was a meaningful existence. And it did not depend on us going home. And so that's when I said, I'm prepared not to stay here just 2 months, but for 10 years or forever. And so that allowed me, I think, to come to this kind of mental or psychological accommodation to our situation, which I think was the reason that we could come home in pretty good shape mentally and physically.
I'm gonna double check the audio real quick while we're still going on.
The situation of the lights is, if you don't move around every 25 minutes, it goes off. Yeah.
don't water around every 25 minutes. Okay.
I'll tell you what, let's re-slate, just because I had to double check this. So we'll cut for 1 second.